Across the world, people have their housing costs taken away as much as half of their income. Have you ever thought of trying to change that? The good news is there is a way. House hacking is real, and we are here to show you how other people just like you have made it happen. Welcome to the House Hacking Podcast. And here is your host, house hacking expert, Andrew Kerr.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you for being here with us. And if you haven't had a chance yet to check out our new House Hacking Quick Start Guide, which covers the 6 basic steps to doing a house hack, you definitely got to go check it out. We'll put in a short link in the show notes, but it's also fibrei.com/HH Now, for today's guest, we're going to hear how him and his wife actually did their first live-in flip and let them walk away with a $50,000 check from the closing table. We're going to cover all those details and about how they are using that sort of first live-in flip with their current one and that sort of process to not only learn about real estate, but how that's setting them up financially to get their dream home. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and bring on Ryan. Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited we're able to get you on. I mean, how you doing? And for folks listening, tell us where you're calling in from.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out and doing well. Fortunately, I work remotely, so the COVID thing wasn't a huge change for me, but I know it was crazy for a lot of people. And I'm working out of New Haven County, Connecticut.
Awesome. So we've really got you on today to talk about this live-in flip, the first one you did, and we'll touch a little bit on the second one that you're working on. But just give us that high-level summary of your live-in flip experience.
Yeah, so this was like our first, I call it like my first real investment. I had some investing experience helping other investors, but this is my first thing, like having our money in it, getting into it myself, getting my hands dirty. So my wife and I were looking for our first place to live. We had done a little basement renovation at my parents' house. That was our first like forte into living together. And then we found our first home that we were going to buy, a foreclosure in our hometown, and plan to do a little renovation and get that moving.
Awesome. So let's really just sort of dig in. I mean, you said it was a foreclosure. So is this like 09, 010? I mean, when did you actually buy the property and what'd you end up buying it for?
So this was 2016, December 2016, we closed and got it for $165,000. It was a foreclosure, but it wasn't like a brutal and tough shape foreclosure. It was, the bank actually did a nice job cleaning it up. It had been vacant for a few years. So it was in good shape. It was ready for us to live in it, but there was definitely some room for us to put our touches on it.
Awesome. So what really, I know you had been working with other investors and helping them out. I mean, was this truly just, hey, we want to do our first deal and we think this is a good way to do it via like this live-in flip style? Or what made this property a good deal and what made you really want to decide on doing this first one?
So this was like a bit of the compromise of just being in a relationship. We're still early in our relationship at the time, kind of, and we each have our own kind of goals and dreams, and mine at the time was starting to become real estate and real estate investing. And so I wanted to do actually a house hack as a rental, buy a multifamily, and she was not interested. I couldn't blame her. But this was our compromise. I figured, okay, how do I still make it work? How do I make it work that she gets what she wants? I can maybe try and get what I want as well. And stumbled upon this foreclosure. And that's kind of, I saw that as our opportunity, and she was totally on board.
Cool. So what was her hesitation to doing like a traditional house hack, like that small multifamily? Was it just, we don't want to be under the same roof as someone else, or were most of the small multifamily in your part of town not in the best areas of town, I guess I should say?
Yeah. To be honest, I think I'm glad she had the foresight, because she feels similar to how I feel now in hindsight, being able to realize it, that she wouldn't want to live with people. And I totally understand that. And then coming to think of it, we both just like our space. And I think it was like the best decision that she made for us to want to do single family, because I ended up totally agreeing, and it worked out really well. So. Well,
it sounds like your relationship is a lot like mine. My wife is the smarter one, and she makes sure we stay on track.
Yeah. I drag my feet at first, and then it ends up, she's usually right most of the time. So
All right. So you settled on doing a live-in flip. You found the property. It was a foreclosure. I mean, what made this the sweet deal? Had you been looking for quite a while, or was this came across it right out of the gate looking at it and you're like, this is the one?
Yeah. So we were looking for a while. It was kind of like maybe HGTV inspired Zillow searching at the time. Like, I feel like we were looking for years and years, but not really serious. Like, we weren't pre-approved or anything until, maybe it was 2015. We got pre-approved, sat down with the mortgage broker, and then really started looking a little bit more seriously. And it was a little bit of dumb luck. My in-laws happened to live on this street, and we were walking our dog. This house had been vacant for years, but I didn't really know. And then we just saw that they cleared out the bushes, put a sign out front, and we thought, let's go check it out. And then we walked in it, and just seeing that it was in livable condition. And again, I was still very inexperienced in real estate at that point. So I did my very rough analysis, and it looked like a really good property, mainly leaning on my uncle who came. He was a contractor, leaning on his opinion at the time and approval that it wasn't going to fall down. And he said, I don't think you'll lose your money. That's all we needed to kind of jump in.
Awesome. It was pretty cool, though. You were able to reach out to some family. I mean, one of the things I think when we get started is we don't know a lot. So and we feel like we have no resources, but I know you had the uncle that was a contractor. But for a lot of folks, if you just start thinking through your network and be like, oh yeah, that buddy from high school, he's in the trades, or he's a carpenter, he's an electrician, or, look through that network of folks that you have and offer to buy someone beer or coffee, and maybe nowadays socially distanced, but try to get someone to help you to walk through the property to, if you're new and not quite sure. So that's great. You're able to have your uncle do a walkthrough with you. All right. So it was in decent shape, needed some cosmetics. The bank had cleaned it up so it was livable. What'd you buy it for? And then what type of loan did you end up using to get the property, and how much did you have to put down on it?
So we got FHA financing. Again, not a very inexperienced at real estate at that point. So we kind of leaned on our friend's mom, who was our agent at the time. And she just said, go in at list price. If you guys like it, list price makes sense. And it was literally the smallest house in a really good neighborhood, and by far the cheapest. So we went for it, and we had been pre-approved, so we knew we could afford it. And the only question was, will it pass for FHA financing? Because we saw some things that maybe would be questionable, but we're not going to take ourselves out of the deal. We figured they're going to do their inspection, so try to get it for FHA financing, see 3.5% down, and see if it'll pass. And fortunately, it did. So I don't know exactly what we came out of pocket for, but it was like roughly 3.5%.
Awesome. And what was the purchase price?
165.
165. Yeah, cool. So if for folks that are listening that might have missed that, what Ryan was referring to, if you're using an FHA loan, they'll actually have an inspection done on the property and to make sure it is actually livable. And in some areas of the country, FHA folks can actually be pretty picky, where if the siding's not in the best shape or there's certain things wrong, and this also applies with VA loans as well. So you want to make sure the property is in livable condition, and then sometimes that FHA or VA folks will come back and say, hey, you actually have to fix this, or the seller does, before it's in, you're able to close on the loan. So that's great. You're able to get through it. Now, did you do any work before you moved in, or was it essentially you could move right in and then put together a plan to fix it up?
Yeah. So no, we didn't have to do anything before we moved in. It was really in good shape. I think most people that would have purchased it probably would have just kept it as is and moved in. It was very livable, just dated and could have used some work. And so we didn't have to do anything, but we definitely had a game plan for once we closed and got started right away.
Awesome. All right. So you moved in right after closing. What was the plan? I mean, was it, we're going to live in it for the 2 years to sort of meet that requirement, or did you originally think you'd hold it longer term? And then what was the work schedule look like? We can knock this out on our own in 3 to 6 months, or were you going to hire contractors? Just tell us a little bit about that plan and strategy you had.
Yeah. So I wish I could pretend it was like a beautiful plan, but as with most things, it was kind of like rough idea and figure it out as we go. The planning gets a little bit cleaner as we gain experience, but at the time, I think it was a pretty rough idea. It was just, this makes sense at the time. we want to fix it up ourselves and learn. I wanted to get into like real estate investing, and this seemed like a easy personal way to get started. So I think at first it was just, walking through with my wife, what do we want to do? Definitely want to do the kitchen. Kitchen's dated. Want to keep the cabinets, want to do the bathroom, paint the whole house. It was just kind of like a rough thing. All right, how do we tackle the hardest to easiest, considering we know we're going to live in it throughout the renovation? So that was kind of a big thing to keep in mind.
Awesome. And how many bedrooms and bathrooms was the place?
It was a 3-bed, 1-bath, but one of the bedrooms was really tiny, but it was legally a 3-bed, 1-bath.
Okay. So you renovated the kitchen, you renovated the only bathroom in the house. I mean, how did that end up working out? Because I know those are like huge parts of a home, and it's hard to, have your kitchen torn apart and still be able to feed yourself, right? And then, part of why I asked the bathroom count was it's great to renovate a bathroom if there's a second one, but trying to live in the middle of a bathroom renovation is tough. So, I mean, how'd that work out with, you and your wife, young, somewhat newlyweds, early in the relationship?
Yeah, so it didn't work out too bad because we fortunately bought in the neighborhood where we have a lot of family. So right in the same town, same neighborhood. So we were able to rely on that, leverage the relationships we had in the neighborhood to go knock on doors if we needed to take a shower or do anything.
Awesome. And then, I know you were early in your career at that point. I mean, how'd you look at doing the work? Was it, okay, bathroom and kitchen? How'd you decide on your fixtures? Did you know not to overspend on renovations at that point? I mean, how did you pick out your fixtures and your furnishes and decide on all of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we were still pretty naive. I had a rough idea. I was like bigger pockets educated at the time, especially throughout renovating the house. I was just going through those podcasts all day. But that was really my wife's job. It was kind of like we tried to separate it again. It was very loosely based off of like a real investment. You're going to be the decorator, designer, and manage those things, and I'll be the contractor. And that's how we did it. So she would ask for some opinions for me, but for the most part, it was totally on her. What she thought for paint colors, which is always very, very difficult, and then whatever type of fixture she thought. But we were doing this one again. We tried to use it like school. So it was kind of an education. How do we get through this as cheaply as possible without being too educated on what the numbers would be? We just wanted to try to make it work as an investment as best we could.
Awesome. So now that you've got more experience, I mean, thinking back, what would you have done differently as far as the renovation's concerned? I mean, would you have actually done more work to the bathroom or less? Same with the kitchen, done better quality fixtures, finishes, flooring? I mean, now that, you got that hindsight, you can look back and you're more experienced. What'd you do right and what'd you do wrong in that process?
Again, we can't take all the credit for it. We had a lot of luck. But buying in the right neighborhood, the right house in the right neighborhood is huge. That was huge to how successful that ended up being. What I would have changed, which we had planned on, we had planned on renovating the outside. It was really a pretty dated split level house, and it had like a very light green aluminum siding, which I kind of liked, but it was dated. If I was really treating that like an investment and like we intended to, we planned on trying to figure out either how to paint it ourselves or maybe pay to paint it. The outside could have, at least the outside of the exterior siding, could have used some work and it could have got a little more curb appeal, put a fence. That would have really made it be like a real beautiful home. But I came to find out we really did max it out numbers wise. So, but if I could have changed things, I would have still wanted to do that. I like the look of it better.
Awesome. So you relied on Bigger Pockets and those podcasts a lot. I mean, did you already know how to do some of the basic tile work and the painting, or was it really just let's dive into those forums to learn how to do that stuff?
So like I touched on before, my uncle is a contractor. I actually have a lot of family that work in the trades, so I'm very lucky there. And I grew up around people who did, manual labor and worked hard. Not to say that I was the hardest worker or that I was the most skilled manual laborer, but really like you mentioned before, just having those resources available gave me the confidence to just kind of blindly jump in. And, to a fault, maybe my uncles might not always love that. I'll just mess things up and then call him and go, hey, I got a problem here. But Fortunately, I do, and fortunately, they're kind enough to answer the phone and come help me out whenever I needed it. So I was able to learn pretty quick, though. I'm a good hands-on learner, so at least that was going for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I know some of it, you just got to dive in and do your first deal, and you're going to make mistakes along the way, and that is really just one of the best ways to learn is you got to learn from those mistakes, and hopefully you buy right and you have enough room in there so you can come out with a profit. But, in my view, even if your very first deal, you break even or even lose maybe $1,000 or two, while that sucks, I mean, think how much most folks pay for like education at college. They'll spend thousands of dollars a semester, and you can learn more in some ways by doing your first real estate deal. So if you can get by breaking even or, being in the hole $1,000, it's a huge win. It's like on the job learning process. So
yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So you did the work. How long did it take you to actually get everything done on the house? Did you spread it out over the sort of 2+ years that you lived there, or did you knock it all out right away and then not have to worry about anything?
Yeah, so that was like always the struggle is it wasn't my full-time focus, and we didn't have a great plan as far as timeline. So knowing we were going to be there for at least a couple of years, that was as far as we knew. We planned to kind of spread it out a bit, but definitely that's where it's kind of good to have my wife really pressuring me to get it done quicker and quicker. So the timeline was mostly dictated by her, hey, we got a party coming up. You got to get this done or you got to get that done. And fortunately, I helped nudge it along a bit. But it took just about the full 2 years that we lived in it. Well, we did it part-time.
Awesome. All right. So you were in there for just over the 2 years to meet that requirement. And then you sold. Why did you decide, in 2019 to actually sell the property? What moved you guys to say, okay, great. Was it just we met that minimum threshold of living there and now we're going to go ahead and sell? Or was there some other motivation behind it?
Yeah. So when we bought the house, I was like maybe just getting into real estate a little bit, very inexperienced. And then throughout that 2-year process, I really treated that house in that time of my life like my own like MBA. I really liked, previous to that buying that house, I really liked what I heard from Tim Ferriss about in his book Tools of Titans. He talked about creating your own MBA, and that's what he did with for angel investing. And I loved that idea, and it just fit with my mindset and how I learn. I always struggled in school, and I tried to really apply myself in college, but it still didn't really work out well. But I felt like, oh, this is a great opportunity. I felt like I could apply myself hands-on to anything in 2 to 4 years and really, really learn a lot. So that was kind of really what we did. And fortunately, within that time of living there, I got my real estate license, I got my contractor's license, and I got a ton of real estate investing experience working with another investor hands-on. But really to answer your question, it was just a matter of timing. It just kind of, we did live there for 2 years. So we knew, okay, we passed that threshold. And then it was just a matter of the market seemed very hot, and it was kind of in June, which is a good time to list. And we just thought, let's put it up and see what happens and see what it would go for.
How long did it end up being on the market for before you went under contract and sold?
4 days.
Oh, wow. So did you do any staging or prep work to get it ready to sell? Or was it just, hey, the market's good enough, we can put it on as is?
So we're pretty neat and organized people for the most parts of the house, and we didn't have kids at the time. So the house was pretty neat and well put together. And my wife likes, staging and keeping things tidy. So it was kind of lived in like a staged property for the most part. So, but we did take some time to, declutter wherever we felt it was necessary and make it a little bit more staged looking. And we just took professional photos and then put it up.
And did you have your license at this point where you could actually list it yourself, or did you hire a realtor?
So yeah, I had my license. So that was, I think that was the first property I ever listed.
Oh, so, awesome. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So what'd you end up selling it for? You bought it $165, or I guess one question first is, I know you did a lot of the work yourself and you had family help you. Roughly how much you spent on material costs?
That was where it was tough too, especially being early on. We did track it, but probably it was hard to track being that we did all of it ourselves. But I think all in, including down payment, we estimated we were around $18,000 to $19,000 for our renovation and down payment.
Yeah, and realistically, your down payment was probably what, $5,000, $6,000, give or take.
Yeah,
so
somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And then what'd you end up selling it for?
So we listed it for $215, and fortunately we got multiple offers within like 2 days, but actually took it off in 4 days and accepted an offer.
Awesome. So $215, you had some closing costs in there. You're the listing agent, so at least on the sales side, you got to keep that commission. I mean, so, if I'm just doing some math really quick, I mean, it looks like you guys walked away with what, like after closing costs, 25, 30 grand, give or take?
Yeah. So again, the fact of living in it for 2 years was just a major bonus. And then of course, doing the work ourselves was huge. So on paper, I think our net actually came close to like 31 grand, but at closing with living in it for 2 years and then me being a realtor, we got a check for $50,000 for our first ever investment, a tax-free check for 50 grand. And that was pretty wild to see.
Man, that is awesome. 50 grand. And were you in your 20s at this point still, or had you sort of gone on to your 30s?
I think it was 26 or so. Yeah, I think it was 26.
Yeah, pretty awesome to walk away with closing table with a $50,000 check all at once. All right, So big question here. What'd you do with that $50,000? Did you go buy the brand new car, or did you dump this into another deal?
So good thing and bad thing. So it was around the time of our wedding. That was actually, we got married while we lived in that house. So we did have some wedding debt. And so most of that went to the wedding, and then the remainder went to actually the house that we're in now, which is our second live-in flip that we're doing. So
awesome. And nothing wrong with that, man. You had your wedding, and then you made a smart choice to say, hey, let's use some of this profit to pay down debt. So cool. Awesome move. All right. Now you bought another live-in flip is what I just heard. So obviously the first one went well enough where you decided to do a second one. And, because I've talked with you before, I actually know you now have a kid. So most folks say, hey, I can only do this live and flip or house hack when I'm young or when we're a couple, and it doesn't work with the family. So obviously it's working for y'all. What did you have your first kid yet when you moved in this house, or was the kid on the way, or just touch on that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So, plans always change, which is good. We always planned on having a kid. We just didn't really plan when necessarily. So we actually moved into this house, and then shortly after found out we had the first one on the way.
Awesome.
So that threw a good wrench, but it was a wrench into the plans a little bit of how quickly we need to get things done. But yeah.
So what's the plan then for this property? How long is it? You going to stay for the 2 years, or you think you'll stay a little longer? What type of work does it need? Just give us sort of this quick summary on where you're at with it and your plans.
Yeah. So we were excited because this one, again, just a little bit more time gave me that much more experience and understanding of real estate. So I saw this one come on the market. This was a HUD property. And I kind of knew right away. I was like, that looks like a good price. But I went and walked it. And just as soon as I walked it, I offered full price that day. So we bought this thing for $140, and it's really a bigger, nicer house. Maybe not in as nice a neighborhood as the last one, but it's about 300 to 400 square feet bigger than our previous house. So we got it for $140, and as of right now, the market's still good. And so our plan was do the full renovation, a little bit bigger renovation, but I think our plan was maybe we would try to do another investment, maybe not a live and flip. And now that we have the kid, though, you could still invest like we talked about, but I think we probably don't want to live in the next one. So hopefully the idea is living here at least 2 years, and maybe buy our final home, which we'll probably get into later, and then use the rest of the profit to roll into another investment, one that we don't live.
And I mean, I think that's the perfect way to do a house hack. A lot of folks, they get in this mindset of like, oh, if I'm going to do a house hack, like this is permanent, this is the rest of my life. And there are some folks that have done multiple different styles of house hacks year after year. But I mean, even just doing this sort of house hack live and flip for your first property or your second property can really just help set you up. It can help you learn about real estate, can help you get a lot of capital to pay down debt. You can build up some income to put towards that final home that you want, so you can now have a nicer home and not be up to our eyeballs in debt. So man, it's awesome that you're able to do these 2 live-in flips and then move to sort of that longer-term home where you'll be able to raise the family long-term in. So that's really awesome. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. The Tools of Titan, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. And then I'm also going to grab some pictures from Ryan. That way we can put them in there. So if you want to go see some before and after and the work that he did. One of the things that I love, though, was, you were finding deals in 2016, in 2019, and buying affordable properties. And most folks think, like, you can't do deals now because it's 2019 and 2020. All the good deals are gone, and you clearly went out and found them. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, before we let you go, we like to ask all of our guests a set of final 6 questions. Let me know when you're ready to get going.
Yeah, let's do it.
The Famous 6.
All right. Number 1, what is your favorite personal finance blog, book, or podcast that you've been listening to recently?
Okay. So I have 2 books. Set for Life by Scott Trench.
Yeah.
I really, really love that book. And it goes perfectly in line with house hacking, whether it's a live and flip or a buy and hold. I just love how he breaks down where most of your money's going and really like enlightens you about how expensive housing is or could be if you don't really be careful. So that was a huge book. I love that book. Scott's got a lot of good information and great perspective. And the other one I'm going to give you 2 is Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. That's probably one of my just all-time favorite books. And I love that perspective and way of thinking that she talks about. And she explains it really beautifully and gives some good examples there.
I'll have to look that one up, and we'll link to both those in the show notes. And then we also did, beginning of the year, this your Big 5, an article about your 5 biggest expenses and ways to reduce them. So I'm going to drop that in the show notes for folks as well, because if you really look at your housing, your auto, your taxes, your healthcare, and your food, if you can look at being strategic about those, you can save a ton of money. But yeah, Scott's book was awesome. All right. Yeah. So question number 2, what's your favorite real estate related blog, book, or podcast that you've read, listened to recently?
So I have to give the cliche answer of Bigger Pockets, because really, although I've heard, whispers of real estate and real estate investing, it was until I found their podcast that I was like, oh, this is something that's real and something that I could actually do. And I actually listened to it for a few months before I even knew it was a website and like a more than just a podcast at the time. But then, once I got on Creative Profile, that was kind of like, I really do owe them a lot for getting me into real estate.
You and thousands of other people. So awesome. All right. Question number 3, what's been your favorite travel destination you've been to so far?
So we're not like huge travelers. We don't take too many vacations, but we like taking a few like weekend vacations a year. And we're in the Northeast. We do love the Northeast. So we usually like going somewhere in Vermont. Stowe, Vermont is always a fun place for us to go.
Cool. And at the time of recording, we're still in the COVID world. So what's next on your travel vacation list, sort of post-COVID?
Not to be too boring, but we actually have a trip planned for our, not our marriage anniversary, but our dating and 10-year anniversary coming up. And we're going to go to stay at a place in Stowe, Vermont.
Oh, cool. Awesome. All right. Number 5, what's the biggest bucket list item that you haven't accomplished yet?
So I don't have a lot of like bucket list stuff, but one major goal that I've always been working towards is buying a home on the street that I grew up on, because it used to be a family farm. It got subdivided to family houses. So a lot of family still lives there. We have a lot of land there. So that's kind of the aim, which hopefully will be the destination after this property. Sell this one and try to buy a family home and join the family on the land.
Oh, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. And then number 6, and the final question is, what is your favorite life hack?
So this might be a little bit like different, but for me, it's philosophy. And specifically, I love Stoicism. It's very popular now, but I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday and learning about Stoicism, and mainly just for perspective. I think we could all get better at having a good perspective on the world and on life and on, our daily life, and definitely Stoicism and having some perspective in history is super helpful for that, to put things, to get a good understanding.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you again for taking the time to chat with us and share your sort of journey going through the first live-in flip and a little bit into that second one. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Thank you again for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the House Hacking Podcast. For more up-to-date information on house hacking, to access links and resources mentioned in today's show, and connect with a guest and host, head over to www.fibrei.com. That's www.fibrei.com, where your house hacking journey begins.